Yeah, this was the World of Warcraft of that year.
It really was, and
Because it didn't do
then
well. It didn't do well domestically, but China,
oh
like China, inflated the worldwide gross so much that it got a sequel. But I think it also, I think Sony took the wrong lessons from that movie
oh
and went,
yeah,
there's a huge appetite for more Venom movies, and there's all these characters, and certainly there's a huge comic book audience. You gotta remember 2018 though, which is when Venom came out, so it's a 6-year-old property, not 4. The
yeah,
world was a much different place.
that's true.
If you're looking at, what else came out in 2018? Avengers Infinity War. There was a lot of stuff going on in 2018. Where we're almost at like the height of comic book movies. So
True.
there was a rising tide lifting a lot of ships, and Venom was a part of that.
Yeah.
And then so sure there was, and then you're going to introduce Carnage, and no one knew at the time what we were going to get with Let There Be Carnage. We assumed we were going to get the bloody.
I can I can tell you what we should have gotten.
Well, nobody cares. We thought we were going to get this violent, bloody, because Sony wasn't necessarily held um, to the same rigmarole as
Yeah.
Marvel and
Well,
Disney. So
Marvel's brand was very broad audience, family friendly. Marvel movies are for kids, and I don't
right,
say that pejoratively. I say that so everyone understands what's going on there. And
Sony
these
had more
ones
freedom to
could
do.
not. They could
Yeah,
have gone a different direction.
right. Sony had the freedom to go in any direction they wanted. And they decided, what would be funny if we turned Venom and Brock into sort of an odd couple, poly queer, weirdo meditation on relationships. And after that, I just kind of threw my hands up. So let's talk about what I thought of this movie. It didn't quite hurt me the way it seems to have you two. But I don't have. Let me say this. Instead of being a jerk, let me shake off the last hour and come at this straight. I don't have any sentimental attachment to anything comic book related anymore. None of it. I barely have a sentimental attachment to things I like. Like Batman or whatever. I just don't care anymore. So I go to these things because I want to spend time with my kids and I want to come on this podcast most of the time and discuss it with my friends. But outside of that, I have zero emotional attachment to any of it. I don't care what they do with these characters. If the movie craft is solid, I'm going to say it's solid. If it's not, I'm going to say it's not, and then I'm going to move on to try to figure out how to pay my bills. That said, for the 109 minutes I watched this movie, I was mostly entertained. Feels like, oh damn you, Hollywood. I was entertained. It's good. I wasn't entertained. It's bad. But me and my kids enjoyed it. There weren't any major complaints when it was over. My kids had nothing memorable, but my kids definitely had a few comments when it was over, and then we were thinking about other stuff. Let me break the movie down as I saw it. Rob is not wrong. There's a lot of repetition in this, and they kind of come storming out of the gate, and then there's a long break of character stuff and relationship building, and it not that I didn't like it because I did, but it also goes on interminably. And then we're into the third act, and we're at a breakneck speed again. Um, as I said before, there is not enough story to carry this movie. It's basically uh, Thanos is trying to take over the world, and they need the key to they need the ring of power to do it. And Brock / Venom are running around with the key, and so they're sending the Nazgul after them. And it just goes like, well, we're going to chase you until we run out of movie, and then when we run out of movie, we'll stop. That's the whole. This is the whole thing. So it's just enough story and just enough plot structure to kind of hang a movie that I'm sure many comic fans don't want, and other people are probably just okay with on it. The stuff in the middle where the movie slows down a lot, and you get to see, Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock sort of meditate on the life he lost. They set up in the previous movie, which I don't have a problem with. I know a lot of people do, but I don't really care. They set up that these two are kind of in like a loving relationship with each other. That's how they're defining the symbiosis, which that either You're either okay with it or you're not. But um, they, but they did. These two love each other, however you want to define love, and but in that love, Eddie Brock had to give up a life that he also valued. Um, and so he's through dealing with this family and kind of seeing what he might have had none of this ever happened to him. He's sort of wrestling with guilt over, well, I don't, I have found something with this creature, but what if I hadn't met this creature and I didn't have this life and I would have had this other life and I want that too and I don't know how I feel about any of this anymore. There's a lot of subtext, and maybe there's no patience for subtext in movies like this. We just want to see stuff hit each other. But it was there. I saw it, and I liked it. I liked those scenes with him because he has to sit there and reflect on his feelings. And I like that they made time for that. I like the family dynamic. I thought they would annoy me after a while, but even like the sarcastic girl, was not so bad, and the wide-eyed boy was not nearly as stupid as I thought he was going to be. They
They,
seem to
they were about 5 minutes away from being really annoying, but I
yeah,
do think they walked the line
yeah
just well
they
enough.
pulled it back just before it got stupid.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought I was going to hate the dad, but like I said, they managed his character enough that I didn't. Here's my only problem with the stuff with the family. Once Tom got out of the fucking van, that should have been the end of this family. We should have never seen them again. And the fact they have to have the family show up so they can put them in danger, so that there's more tension in that climax. Like there's personal stakes. Like you've spent this entire movie with this fucking family, so if they die, that's sad. And it was like, this seemed way shoehorned in. This seems way hackneyed. And then the father like saves the day with a bazooka. I'm like,
Yeah, that was.
I was like, come on. Like,
Oh, that was
I'm
dumb.
willing to forgive a lot of things that I'm sure other critics and other comic book fans are not going to forgive, and I don't care. But that one, I'm like, what are we doing here? This is dumb. I genuinely was sad. They've done enough to build up the relationship between Eddie and Venom that when there was a question of who was going to end up sacrificing themselves to save the day, and it ended up being Venom, I was sad when it happened. Didn't quite, Coco cry or anything like that, but I was definitely like, oh, that makes me sad. Um, Overall, it is the slightest of slight movies. It is. I don't want to be dismissive when I say this, but I don't know how else to define this movie. It is popcorn fare. It is literally like what you're kind of supposed to go to the movies for. Here's a little something for you to think about. Here's a little something to hit you in the feels, but it's mostly, the one thing though I'll agree with Robert on and his sort of overall take with the movie is how you use the word forgettable, and there's another word that I'm trying to grasp at, disposable. And how disposable this movie really is. It's one of those where it's a candy movie. You go, you experience the candy, you throw it away, you move on with your life. It's not going to stay with you. It's not going to change movies in any kind of way, and it's going to be forgotten about in about a week, if that. It has zero impact on the film landscape. It is more of the sludge. Does that mean it was all bad or all good? No. I just went through 10 minutes of what I thought was good and bad about this. But I'm not. But it's also just more of the same old gruel, and it's hard for me to find a emotional reaction to gruel. So
This is a problem I have with the larger movie landscape at the moment. I'm using Venom to highlight it, but this is not exclusive to Venom. But the assembly line, mass produced, again, forgettable, disposable content mill
yeah,
is, if you want to know part of why the theatrical experience is suffering, we need to be honest about how some of it is that. Some of it is that there's nothing there. I shouldn't say there's nothing, but we've talked before about the components at play with the theatrical experience becoming less and less important, and there's a lot of them. One of them is that the stuff being made is so forgettable and so uninteresting and so clearly, again, pumped out of an assembly line and to just be discarded. that no one wants to make the effort because it's not worth it. And that's a component of how everything is dying off. And it's sad.
So I asked ChatGPT how many films debuted nationally in theaters in 2000 versus 2019. And it says in 2000, 478 movies were released in U.S. theaters, while by 2019, this number had nearly doubled to 792.
Yeah.
Mark, you mentioned a candy movie, so I'm gonna take it a step further. The candy that this movie would be relatable to is fruit stripe gum. In 5 seconds, you forget about it.
Okay.
Oh, that is a callback. Yeah, you get like 3 seconds of flavor out of that.
Yeah,
Also, the CGI, two things, just because they were mentioned before. The CGI in this sucks. Venom looks like fucking Roger Rabbit. Um,
There's oh my okay, so I'm not gonna get on this scene conceptually. I
mhm.
think it's stupid, but I'm gonna leave that alone. But there is a dance number in this where Venom and the old Chinese lady dance to ABBA's "Time of Your Life,"
It's funny
the
because I kind of want to talk
dancing
about
queen.
that, but go ahead. Say what you got to say.
So I'm leaving aside the bizarreness of the decision to have in the middle of a Venom movie an ABBA dance number.
I will deal with that in a moment.
But it just looks bad.
Yeah, it looks terrible. He looks
It
like
just
Roger Rabbit.
it just looks. Roger Rabbit actually looked good
Yeah,
by
it
comparison.
it looked like clearly a cartoon character interacting with a human, but the human doesn't know the cartoon characters. They like sometimes they'll give you like a mop or something to work with so that you have something with weight. And like yeah no, or we've seen other performances where clearly people don't know how to act on a green screen or
Yeah.
or with like floating objects, and it looks really bad. It was one of those things. They established in the second movie, whether you love it or hate it, that Venom is basically a toddler, kind of in the same sense that um, what's her face, the redhead from Poor Things.
Emma
What?
Roberts.
No, Emma Roberts was in Space Cadet.
Oh no, sorry, Emma Stone.
Emma. Thank
You're
you.
right, Emma Stone.
Um, Venom and Venom very similar in nature and character to Emma Stone's character in Poor Things. It's a toddler
A
kind of
lot
discover.
of sex.
It's a toddler kind of discovering things in an adult body the way an adult would without the having grown through adolescence. So again, if you're a 40-year-old toddler and you're discovering sex for the first time, you're gonna be kind of weird about it. Um, they established a lot of this in the second movie, and they didn't double down on it, thank God. But only because like doubling down on it would have made this way weird. Um,
You couldn't. There were
it would have
in
become an
this kind of
entirely different
movie.
movie for a weirder audience.
Yeah, like this would have had to have been an art house feature if you wanted to take what
Venom,
they kind of played with in
so
that first
mash
one.
together Venom and Poor Things.
That's the worst thing I've ever heard of conceptually, by the way.
So what I'm getting to is they couldn't double down on it, but they did continue it. At least there's character consistency in how they treat Venom. So him having a impulsive, not sexual, it wasn't in any way sexual, but an impulsive kind of feel good moment with a lady he had affection for and wanting to dance. And I laughed hard at this line. He's like, we never get to do anything I want to do, and it said every woman ever. So I was like,
the supreme irony of that line coming out of that creature after this movie.
yeah. Well, the point being, the scene tracked for me because it tracks with how the character behaved in the second movie, and how they treat this character. And I get that, like, the Jasons, the Roberts, the Critical Drinkers, the Andres from Midnight's Edge, and every other comic book fan is like, this is not the Venom that we read in the comic books. Okay, well, it's the Venom they created in the second movie. What do you want from me? Anything else, Jason?
Hang on.
Sorry.
uh,
Wait,
outside of
hang on. Robert wanted to say something, and I cut him off. Go ahead.
As a brief self-defense to the implication there, I have no affection for the comic book. For
Oh,
the
okay.
record.
Fair.
My gripe with the first two was this, is especially true of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of set up this as a darker, grittier world and a darker, grittier tone for
And
this.
completely abandon it by the second movie.
And more importantly, as far as the second one goes, you abandon it at the moment when the murderous, violent psychopath
Yeah.
is running around with like
Look,
incredible power. Like,
if
that
you
was a bad
if you
choice.
want to get up on the table and bang your shoe and scream about these movies, its worst offense is the tonal inconsistency. You can't have the character who wanders around hatcheting people and there's blood everywhere and go also poly queer dancing rainbow colors. No.
At a rave.
Yeah, at a rave, yeah. None of those
Yeah,
things.
that's
That is peanut butter and vinegar, and I don't know what you think you're doing.
and once again, we got a little bit more of that here with
Less than in the second movie, but yes.
oh no, the second is by far the worst offender of this by a
Yeah.
million miles. It's still present here. I'm
See,
gonna just
they're running for their lives way too much for him to focus on I want cookies and I want cookies and ice cream. You know,
true, but then like, hey, he can't control his impulses around gambling.
right. Because
Followed
because
by I must transform and dance.
yeah,
Never mind how dangerous this is.
right.
Never mind
And
that
that
I've lectured Eddie in the past about the transformation, and this is what leads them to us. Clearly, that won't happen this time,
I
right?
will tell
Because
you
I'm dancing.
having known some mentally ill and impulsive people with mood disorders that tracked for me.
No, I'm not saying
Hey,
it's
I'm on the
untrue to
show.
I'm not saying it's okay. Okay. I'm not saying it's untrue to reality.
Hmm.
I'm saying it's a really it's too stupid for this movie, especially when they at least set up in the previous instance of this.
Here's what I'll tell you. I'm gonna save you here and say it a different way. All of our complaints about Joker kind of revolved around this one point. If you're going to do this, don't do this with this character. Don't do this with this particular movie. Don't do it with these set of circumstances. It's fine that you're doing this. We said the same thing about the fourth Matrix movie. It's fine that you're doing what you're doing. Go ahead and make that movie, not with this character, not with these circumstances, not with the check this big studio gave you. And everything they're doing with Eddie and Venom in the second and third movie is fine if you want to do that, not with this stupid character, though. And I'll tell you, if there's one trend to pull out of this, and then I'm going to throw it back to Jason and we're getting out of the craft review. Um, if there's one trend to pull out of this is Hollywood using very popular things to tell very niche thematic stories.
Yeah.
And it's two trains on the same track, and the engineers being drunk, and the trains are all colliding, and everyone's like, "Well, I don't want to ride trains anymore. This is dangerous. Every time we get on one, there's a chance we're all gonna die." The film landscape, everybody, colliding trains.
Pretty much.
Because there used to be sober people running these things, and the comic book trains went that way, and the weirdo polyqueer relationship movies went that way, and the never the twain shall meet. And if you were going to do, a combination of those things, they were on its own separate track. They didn't take Superman and go, but what if we made him trans? Which is fine if you want to do a trans Superman story, but you can't do it with the actual Superman. Like, I don't know why this is a problem. Well, I do know why it's a problem, but I'm not taking another hour on this.
Well, it's a problem because you have one group of people who is really resistant to not seeing the vision that they had in their head represented. And then you have another group of people who are like, but I want to make my thing, and the only way I can get it made is if I violate everything that came before it about this other character that I have no attachment to anyway.
Right. And it's
stupid.
Where it's now being called toxic fandom, but this isn't toxic fandom. That it does exist, but it's something else. This is when you completely disrespect a fan base. You don't care about their wants or needs, and then you try to sell them gruel.
Yeah, look, toxic fandom, I agree with you. It's totally a thing. I've been on the wrong end of it. I've been part of it. I've seen that up close. Saying that this is not the version of the character that I want to see is not toxic. That's just expressing your opinion about the material being presented. Taking a character that does exist and has lore and has a fan base, and you can tweak it when you adapt it. I think any reasonable person would agree. Making the hard left at Albuquerque and then going, but this is the Venom movie. Aren't the Venom fans going to come support it? And they all kind of go, no. You can't then throw up your hands and go, fine, bigots. I mean, these are two fundamentally opposed ideas, and you can't get pissed off when people aren't responsive to it.
Okay. With that said, and I think that's a very good way to end this segment, Jason, if you've got nothing else, go into your plugs and get the fuck out.
I mean, okay. Love you too, Mark.